In this episode, join us for a real and vulnerable conversation with empowerment coach and self-defense instructor Tasha in her church. Tasha shares how her experiences with stalking and assault are what inspired her to take what she learned in extensive martial arts training and turn it into an empowering self-defense program that works in the real world, even when wearing 3-inch heels and a dress. Despite her years of training, she found herself the target of a stalker again. And after a crushing period of withdrawal, Tasha shares how she found her way through it, did her work, found the bravery to share her story and stop hiding from imposter syndrome. Tasha's rare, open authenticity and candor gives us a glimpse into what it takes to liberate yourself from what happened to you, to stop playing small, and to turn your pain into purpose.
Well, first of all, we want to welcome you. We're truly honored to have you here with us today. I know me and Natalie, from the moment that we met you, we felt your energy. We were so impressed by everything that you bring to the table and really everything that we feel that you can provide to make a difference in so many different lives. So we look forward to one day seeing you in Oprah and also just seeing your evolution through this. And we're very thankful for you to just taking this time with us to help some of our students and some of our listeners get to know you a little bit better.
And I just want to take the opportunity to say aloha, because I love getting to talk to Tasha, whether it's in person like this or through email, because I get an excuse to say it and it always puts me in a good mood. And I secretly have a location crush on where she lives in Hawaii. So with that being said, welcome. And we would just love you to take a moment to introduce yourself and kind of give the gist of like what you do and who you are. And then we'll really get into the nitty gritty about why you do what you do and how all of this came to be and why you're so passionate about it.
And if you can, start when you were about 2 years old. Thank you.
Yeah. A young tyke.
An adorable young tyke, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes, who loved kittens.
Hi,
everyone. And yes, Natalie, I love talking to you too. I'm so happy to be here. So thank you for having me on. Again, my name is Tasha in a church. I'm an empowerment coach in the Hawaiian Islands on the island of Maui. So that might be why they have the location crush, but they are always welcome to come visit. So I've been doing empowerment coaching for over 20 years now. And I started back in Washington State, and I actually studied 7 different styles of Japanese martial arts. And along with that, I studied Tai Chi and took trainings with Jeff Alexander, who taught Rocky Balboa for the movies. So I've had a wide range of backgrounds. Most recently, my training's been in something called ESDG, which is ESD Global's empowerment self-defense training, along with Impact personal safety through Impact Global. And I also have done psychological first aid through Johns Hopkins University. So that's more of the empowerment side. As far as just a little bit more of a background, I have my MBA in global business leadership, and I have a psychology background. So if you think that I'm analyzing you, I probably am.
Makes it fun.
Yeah, but yeah, I got involved in this work a really long time ago. Grew up from sort of humble beginnings. I grew up on a farm, and both of my parents were teachers, but they also studied Goju-Ryu, which really inspired me. But I had some different instances in my life where I felt like I needed to go into martial arts specifically.
So obviously we know your story, but we'd love to know more, and we'd love everybody listening to kind of know like that this is a really interesting, unique niche, not only being in martial arts, but kind of what you've done with it, where you took what you learned and then you really turned it into something that's very usable. And So if you don't mind sharing, like what drew you to this work? Like what was that took you from that original career path you might have started out on to then start saying, hey, this is something that I want to create in the world. So what was that like at a personal level? Like how did that come to be in the first place?
Well, thank you. Originally, I wanted to be an author. But at 15 years old, I actually was introduced to a stalker that I knew, a family friend, and they were 17 years my senior, and basically groomed me. And when I found out their intentions, I had to protect myself and stand up for myself verbally. So it was a very intense situation. This person was 6'2", over 230 pounds, ex-special forces in the military. And you're thinking like, so was I at 17, 18. So yeah, I realized that I needed more skills. My parents had actually studied something called nonviolent communication, and also something called Say It Straight. So they were very assertive with their boundaries. So I had gotten on the phone and I called this person. I said, listen, you're not going to talk to me. You're not going to touch me. You're not going to come near me. If you are walking my way, you need to turn around and walk the other way. Are we clear? And I thought, yes, I did it. And then I actually got cursed out on the phone. So it was really terrifying. And I thought, oh my God. And so I breathed, and I just remember how calm I felt after just getting in touch with my breath. And then I said it again, and that person left me alone. But I also realized that if that had been an in-person confrontation and that person took a swing at me, I would have been a goner. And I just know that so many of us have had these real life situations. And as a teenager, you don't want to talk to your parents. I know that that's so scary for parents out there. But I just didn't want my parents to look at me differently. I didn't want them to look and think, I no longer was their little girl. And so I thought I needed to do this on my own. And I joined a martial arts school, and I trained every day, but I trained like 5 days a week. I would teach at least 3 days a week. And I really dedicated my life to that. And 3 years into my teaching career, I was in a male-dominated school. And so I realized that a lot of the stuff that they were teaching didn't feel really like self-defense to me. It was amazing. And the punches and the kicks and the blocks, I felt really tough. But I wasn't sure if it would actually work in real life. And I used to go out salsa dancing. I don't know if you salsa dance out there, but I love to salsa dance. You're really in your body. And so I would go out salsa dancing, and 3 years into my teaching career as a martial artist, I was out salsa dancing. It had been a year in the salsa community, and I had made it very clear, no dating salseros. I just want to dance and enjoy my time. And I was out at a ballroom, and that night I got roofied and taken, and I had to actually fight for my life. And I realized at that moment that the stuff that I was learning at my martial arts school didn't save me while wearing 3-inch heels and a dress. What saved me was my intuition and really tapping into it. And so I hit the person with a pair of keys, and I fell down a flight of stairs, and I had to drive home at 3 a.m. So it was a really intense moment. And again, it's just like I can totally look back and think parents are probably like, oh my God, my baby girl, like what's going on? And I didn't want to tell my parents. I wanted to do it on my own. And so I suddenly started creating a curriculum. I had my self-defense partner, Lee Villay-San, who does both Chinese and Japanese martial arts. And I was able to tell him what had happened. And I said, I really think we need to go through all of these moves. So we went through over 800 self-defense moves and came up with a curriculum that was set around me wearing 3-inch heels and a dress, and what's going to work with that? How are you going to defend yourself? And so I put that together. And in 2012, I got asked to teach at a middle school. There was stuff happening at the school for middle schoolers, lots of bullying. Sadly, there was a lot of stuff happening in more of the sexual realm, which was really terrifying for a lot of parents, and how to address that. And so I decided to put together an empowerment program for middle school and high school girls. And I co-founded that business with another woman, and it was just really amazing to see the transformation for the girls. But you know how you're doing this work, but you don't feel like you're doing the work. So I know that for myself, I as I said, I really wanted to be an author. It was a dream of mine, and I had this story in my head ever since I was little, and my parents would take me to the library every week to pick out the perfect book. And so in my head, I'm like, this is the book that I want. And so I had spent all these years working on creating this book, and it was ready to launch at the Washington State History Museum. I was getting everything ready to go. And I had a knock on my door, and it turned out to be another stalker. And I had to, again, defend myself, which was a very scary situation because they were pretending to be the maintenance man and came into my home. And so after that event, I had no creative life in me. I just couldn't focus. And I realized I need help. I need to heal. I need to do this work, because if not, I'm going to drown. I just wasn't able to carry on. And so I started going through this healing process that was so amazing. I mean, I ended up getting professional support from therapists. I went to women's groups. I started doing my own healing journey when it came to self-care and affirmations every single day. And like, you're doing it, Tasha, you're doing good. Keep it up, you know. This is what I tell myself in the mirror. And I realized I need to find myself, you know, I need to find myself. And I after the stalker, my relationship ended, and I realized I needed to go look for who is Tasha. And that brought me on this journey of going out, traveling, doing a lot of solo travel, trying different foods, trying different things to help myself. I got into yoga, and I absolutely love it. And so I just went on these journeys, and I realized there's a pattern here. There's all these things that are coming together. There's all this stuff that has helped me to get to a place where I feel healed and whole, and not just be a survivor, but a thriver. And I thought, I want this for other people. Other people deserve to have this too. Like they shouldn't be stuck in this place where they just feel hopeless every day, or they just feel like they're incapable or not enough. And so I started putting together these little tools and adding them into my curriculum. And that's, you know, what we just launched with the self-care course. I'm so excited for everybody to try out these different techniques. Because it started, it was like the mantras, the morning routines of, okay, you're going to get focused. But I put all these things together because I believed that I was worth fighting for. And I really want that for other people. And so that's why I do this work. That's the background of my story. And I ended up meeting someone really, really amazing. And he asked me to move to Maui with him. And yesterday we had our 9-year anniversary. So
well, congratulations.
Yes. And actually, before we move on, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for sharing what your experience was. It gave me goosebumps like 5 times. And just like I'm sitting there thinking, anyone listening, it's like, especially the women, because so many people can relate in their own way. It's like, just like, remember to breathe, because like witnessing someone else's story like that is powerful, because the fact that you share it gives people a sense of not being alone. It also gives them permission to share theirs, and that's part of what in the empowerment self-defense course that you teach. Like, that's part of it, is like, it's like finding and owning your story and doing your healing work. And that what we love about you is the entire everything you do is so authentic, because you're doing it because you've been through it yourself. You found these tools because you needed to find them, and that's why we relate to it so much, because that's exactly where all of our content comes from as well. It's like we've been through. It's like we're the type of people that always want to grow, want to improve, and then it's like you said, you reach that point where it's like, well, if I'm finding this and this is transforming me, I want other people to find this too. And so it's natural to then teach that. And then for you already had the background in a teacher role as far as with the martial arts. So it was just such a perfect combination. But it never would have happened had you not been willing to like take ownership for your experience and seek the healing and the growth that you wanted, and actually like do the work, like you said, and also to be willing to put yourself out there and share, because your work wouldn't be effective if people didn't really understand why it meant so much to you. So again, just wanting to acknowledge you for being willing to be open and share your authentic self with us.
Yeah, we're definitely grateful for the vulnerability. And obviously, it's unfortunate that you went through some of these things. But I think the beauty of it is that you've always found purpose. At your core, you are a creator, right? So it's almost like you've taken your life experiences and even as a male, I know we can focus it just on women, but I think a lot of males can also resonate out there. And as a male, I can understand myself. Part of your journey is just finding yourself, or like talking to yourself in the mirror, or even for myself being Hispanic and moving. I used to move every 6 months with my mom, and finding myself being chased by different people in college, people knocking on my door and wanting to beat me up just because I was a male, Hispanic male, because of my race. So it's almost like I had to, for example, for me, I got into wrestling. And I got really into it, where other people are just doing it kind of for fun. But for me, it was a survival mechanism. Whereas for you, a lot of the martial arts, it sounds like it was also just for survival. And then it became, how can I help other women and other people also be if they're in a situation that I was in, be able to protect themselves. And coming from a background of having worked with a lot of domestic violence centers, or the Women Resource Center and things like that, I can really see how what you bring to the table is so essential. And then when you include the other side of it, the self-care and, just empowerment of just people in general, I think that is needed at such a deep level in our society. So again, I thank you for being you. I thank you for listening to the calling and that knock on your own door that says, these experiences can serve as a foundation for your own greatness of what you're supposed to be doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I look back and think, okay, how did that happen? But you're right. It's something where I feel like every single challenge, every single moment where I thought I was failing, it was just this lesson that was bringing me closer to the work that I'm doing now, so that I can help people who feel like they're failing, or feel like they're a victim and really want to be in a different space. I share my story, and I know that for a lot of people, that's really hard to do. But part of the reason why I share my story is because I want them to understand that it's okay. We live in this society where everything happens behind closed doors. You're not supposed to talk about those things. You're not supposed to talk about somebody attempting to assault you or rape you. And I know that part of the healing process for me was actually just being able to share and really go back into my roots, my culture, my Native heritage, my Scottish heritage, and really dig deep into those things that I love. And it's really interesting. I'm very close with my parents. I literally talk to my parents every day since the pandemic started. And I know that, part of this process for me is being able to get some of that connection back, that feeling, because I know when you go through these really traumatic experiences, you feel very disconnected from either your family, your friends, yourself, your experience being Hispanic and dealing with prejudice. You separate yourself to survive. So there's this complete disconnect of like who you are. And I really share my story because I want people to understand that you can be all of those things. You can have all of those experiences and you can still be you. You can still be amazing and brilliant and wonderful and smart and funny and have those experiences. So.
And you're absolutely right. It's like, I think one of the biggest hurdles for people is recognizing that whatever happened to them doesn't define them. And that's the starting point. Once you can even comprehend it, even if you don't fully believe it, it's the starting point for when growth and healing can happen. Like, because you have to be able to see yourself beyond that. But one of the things I think is powerful about your story that you told, and then also what you just said now about reconnecting to your parents. One of the things you said twice in the story was that when this happened, these things happened to you, you didn't want to tell your parents. You wanted to do it yourself. And what's interesting about it is that you had parents that were clearly already, aware. They practiced martial arts. They were in the mindset to understand. So more so than the average parent, right? So that would have been working in your favor. And then also that you have a close relationship with them. So it's really interesting. And I want people to think about this, that even someone who has almost an ideal situation with a parent still didn't feel comfortable sharing because of how much. I don't think it was about the judgment of them. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was the judgment of yourself, right?
Yes.
But I think it would be valuable now, because it seems like now it's like telling other people is like, wow, I'm telling other people. I didn't even tell my parents when it happened, So just elaborate a little bit about what was that journey from going from like, I don't want anyone to know, especially not my parents, to now here you are, you're opening your relationship with them, you're talking freely about it. And like, how do you feel about it now looking back? And what would you recommend someone, like, would you want someone to really sit with maybe doing it differently, maybe speaking up? Like how that part of the story is so important. I think things could be different if we spoke up, but it's so common not to. Yeah. And your story is just so perfect to illustrate it.
Yeah. And actually, before you answer, I just want to add one more thing to that as context, because I think it's important what Natalie's saying, because I think that in our society, one of the things that holds us back is shame. And we feel that in different aspects, whether we feel like, imposter syndrome as an entrepreneur, or because we had something that happened to our lives and we want to share with other people, but we don't know how it's going to be perceived. We don't want to be judged for it. And I think a lot of times when you're a victim to something, then you victimize yourself,
Yes.
So how do you let go of that? And I think that's where now,
kind of like, how did you make
the transition?
What changed? If you can identify what changed or what thought process or where along the point that shifted for you, that might help someone else trigger it within themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, first I look at intuition, right? Our intuition is basically the collective knowledge that we've had since birth all the way up to where we're at now. And when we are going through a situation, we don't share about situations because of the thought process of like these memories connected to that person who we were before the event, and all of these ideas around it. So you judge yourself. You think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be the same. Oh my God, they're not going to look at me the same. Oh, I'm going to get treated differently. Oh, I'm going to be shunned. I will be a black sheep in the family, all of this stuff. And I remember when my parents actually heard, when my dad first heard of what happened to me in high school, it was on a podcast. I didn't have I hadn't gotten to a point of being able to share with him. And part of that was I actually had this moment of clarity in my early 30s where I wanted to start telling people my story, because I in my head, it was, they need to hear this story so that they feel safer being able to tell others. So I brought up the courage and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell my mom. And I told my mom what had happened. And she just hugged me. She just was, so sad and so angry. She actually took all of my belts that I had earned, except for like my my higher ranking belts, and went to these different schools and told people, like, don't go to this school, it's a dangerous school, for different stuff that had happened, for harassment at my martial arts school, being a woman. And my survivorship stories when it came to my first stalker. My mom, I was scared to tell my parents because I was worried that it would shift the way that they looked at me. In reality, it brought us closer. Your parents know that something's going on. I mean, your family will know if something's happened to you, because they've lived with you their whole lives, and they look at you, and if something has changed, they're going to feel it. And so there's all this tension and everything. And for a long time, I was so resistant. I would actually, push my parents away. I'd get into fights with them. For random reasons that had nothing to do with anything. And it was this blockage in my head of, I can't be vulnerable. And the vulnerability aspect of it really changed me. It was part of the healing. The 5 principles of self-defense are think, yell, run, fight, and tell. And the tell piece is what gets you to the next plateau of your life. Like being able to embrace that, yes, these things happen to you, and you can still be successful. You can still have a beautiful relationship with someone. You can still have kids if you want to have kids. So I guess when it comes to me choosing to tell my family and how liberating that was, I look at it and think, I wish that people felt safer. And I know that part of that has to do with societal reasons, but I wish that people did feel safer telling their trusted friends or people who they know. And it also has to do with the people who are receiving it, right? We all do this work. So how are we receiving the information? And I loved how earlier you just thanked me for me sharing my story. Sometimes people will listen to a story and they'll say, oh, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't this happen? So it's a dual sword. Yes, there are going to be those people who question you, who say, why didn't you do those things? I'm definitely not one of them. For me, victim blaming, I take that very seriously. I think that if you're here, you're watching this with us, you have survived. And now it's time to live. Really just embrace the joy, embrace the journey.
Well, thank you. And, I think one of the important factors that you talk about is just that vulnerability. And what I found in my journey, I grew up in an environment as well where, vulnerability wasn't, everyone talked about things, we had deep conversations and stuff like that. But like true vulnerability, which is some of the things that you're talking about, I always found very challenging because I was always the one that get things done, just suck it up and do it kind of person, right? But and I think that one of the things that you're pointing out, it is important for people to recognize that there are those people that might not be as supportive and might question, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? And I think that it's also important to know that it's okay to be vulnerable and that it does lead to deeper connections with the people that you love the most. But it's also important to know who those people are that you can be vulnerable with fully and that you can trust at your deep core. Because I think what happens, some people, they try to be vulnerable with people that they might not be able to, and then shuts them down even more, so I think it's just a lot of valuable information for people being out there, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And I must say one thing is that just like you, some of my parents have also learned things about me in podcasts. So I found that very funny because they've listened to it, be like, wait a moment.
Yeah.
So like some of the things that I would say, like when I was real young, my mom was very strict. So I used to sneak in the middle of the house and we used to steal her car. Right. So it's like, wait a moment, you used to steal the car in the middle of the night. So
Yeah. So it's interesting, vulnerability. Whenever I think of vulnerability, of course, I think of Brene Brown.
Of course.
Her book, Daring Greatly. And I know that during my experience, my last experience with an attempted sexual assault at my home by a stalker, I was feeling extremely raw. I just thought, oh my gosh, I am such a phony because I have this empowerment course I'm teaching in schools to all these kids who are looking up to me, who are listening to me and thinking, all the stuff that I'm saying means something. And I just went through this experience to happen again. And you think, gosh, there has to be something wrong with me. There's like a beacon for wrongness and it's right here. And then all these things are coming to me. So I was really down on myself. And I remember I had these different women's gatherings and I put them together because I wanted to have this time with women. I think that, having time with people who are like you in your community is so important. And every time we would have these affirmation cards, I'd set them on the table and at different place settings, and whatever card you were drawn to, that's the one that's the place where you'd sit and we'd all eat and have a meal and just talk about life. And it was in those meetings that I realized, or gatherings, that I realized how amazing and profound and life-changing they were, and how wonderful it was for all of us to just have a moment to be vulnerable. I mean, these were women who were CEOs, presidents of businesses, business owners, executive directors. And it was this chance for them to say the stuff that they needed to say, whether that had to do with a failing marriage, a failing career, feeling like a fraud, feeling imposter syndrome. And instead of looking at them and thinking, oh, that's awful, which I think a lot of us think, oh, if I tell somebody, then that's their reaction. I looked at them and I would think, God, they're brave. Mm-hmm. Wow, they're so amazing. Oh, they're brilliant, because they are. And I think when we don't share our story, there's something that just sort of dies inside. There's a silence. And it's not just someone else silencing us, the action, which can happen in relationships, but we silence ourselves, and it's damning. It's so hurtful. And we go through life and it's almost like there's a veil over us. And when we are willing to be vulnerable, that veil releases. It gives us this opportunity to breathe deeply and with joy. And I know that there are people out there who are struggling when it comes to their own vulnerability and sharing their story. And yes, it's always good to find those people in your life who you feel connected to and safe with to be able to share. I tell you, it's the most freeing thing in the world to be able to share what has happened to you. And it saves your life in a way. It gives your voice back. I know that my dad, he just cried. He's not a crier. I mean, like he's an emotional guy. He's really, really great and just bubbly, warm. But he just felt so sad because he just wanted to have protected me. And I said, it's not your job. This is my journey. This is for me. And I think that that's also part of it. We go through this and we don't want to share with people because we want to figure it out on our own, and that's tough. And that's also part of the healing process. And when you finally do get to the point where you feel comfortable enough to share with your family or friends what has happened to you, it releases something beautiful. And it allows you this moment of clarity where true freedom can happen. And that's this opening up when it comes to my business and my life that has been so helpful just for me to take risks, is because it started with me going into a mental health professional and actually, staring at them for weeks at a time, talking about, the day-to-day of like, oh, how is your day? You want to talk about my life because you're oh yeah, talk about the walls, talk about what they're wearing, judging. And then finally that moment where I just shared. And I cried, and I hadn't cried for a really long time. And that's a whole other thing with vulnerability. I think that a lot of us are very strong, and we don't share, and we're not criers because all of the crying, it feels like it's all out of us and we have nothing left in us. And I used to just sit there and think, it'd be really great to cry. I'd talk about it with my therapist. It'd be really great to cry. I think about it sometimes. I plan it in the evening. I say, you're going to cry right now. You're going to give yourself permission to cry. It wouldn't happen, And I think that when you have that vulnerability, there's the release, there's crying involved, which is why a lot of us are like, nope, we're not going to do that. I don't want to cry. I want to ruin this makeup and this hair. Yes, that's right. But it's this moment that will change your life. And if you are willing to, if you are bold enough to do it, it's gonna make you so much happier. So that's, I think that vulnerability in your life and all aspects of your life lead to so much positive change if you just give it a try.
Yeah. When I can definitely relate to everything that you're saying. And I think that for you, I feel this energy, right? But a lot of the people that go through our programs or in our circles and stuff, they're helpers. They've been the lifetime helpers where people come up to them with their problems, and everyone just wants to kind of like throw it all on them, and because they have that energy where it's like, okay, yes, I am that Zen place where you can come to and have a caring, compassionate, and a person that's not going to judge you. But then at the same time, and even for me, for example, when my friends used to party in Puerto Rico in San Juan, the capital, all my friends would be getting drunk, and yes, salsa was being danced in the street. And I would be sitting around with the homeless population, just having deep conversations, just listening to their journey, because I was so intrigued of what drove, what got them there. And, a lot of my people around me would judge them, and some of them had lost a son or something like that, or like went bankrupt and lost everything, or went through a divorce and went through a really hard situation that they couldn't get out of, right, emotionally. And as I listened to them, I also found that a lot of people would come to me, but then it was very hard for me to also be in that space where, like you say, I can express certain things, but even like be vulnerable to the point that I would cry. It was very challenging because I felt like I had to be the rock for everyone else. And the reason I share that, because I think a lot of helpers, this happens to them, where they are like that person that people come to. So they feel like they are that rock for other people, but then they don't feel like they can reciprocate that to a certain degree to show that vulnerability at a deeper
Same.
level. So
like I definitely can exactly the same thing where it's when you're used to the one who is not only do you have that gift of being strong, but that you're strong for other people. So then it's kind of like, well, they can't be strong for me, you know, and I can't be weak because then I can't be strong anymore. And so this is a big thing for a lot of people, and obviously in different ways. But again, like these people who are like helping, and they're helpers and nurturing and compassionate, and they have a lot strong empathy. Sometimes, yeah, there's people like that are very open. They might even be very emotional, but that's not the same as being vulnerable. Yeah. Some people are very emotional and might like cry really easily and express a lot of things, but they're still harboring and holding so much inside of them. And I think that's, you know, as you were talking, that's a big piece I was feeling, is like the difference between before, when it's like you're trying to protect it, you're holding it in, and it's like it kills you inside, right? But the reason it's like, for me, the way I would explain it is like to share it, to be vulnerable and have people know your truth. What it makes it feel like is that it makes you feel very small, right? But the truth is that when you do put it out, it's like what's keeping it small is holding it in you. When you let it out, that you actually expand. And I think that's the thing they don't understand that that's going to happen. They think they're going to shrink even smaller. They think that the judgment is going to come from outside, and that's going to make it worse. But they don't realize it's this opening, this freeing, this expanding sort of experience. And that you did that, and then you saw, oh wow, like this is a big change. And you kept doing it. You like adopted it as your new way of being with yourself and in the world, which is such a powerful shift to make. And it's interesting. I'm glad you had brought it up about how, like, when that third incident happened, after here you are, you're teaching all of this stuff. You know, like that's the ultimate feeling like an imposter, or feeling like a failure, like that it would make a lot of sense that you'd have these judgmental thoughts, and you'd be so afraid of like, well, now what do I do, right? But I'm glad you brought it up, because it ties into this vulnerability piece. Like that's the ultimate vulnerability, to have to face your own judgment of that, and feeling like would be judged from the outside. But that's what I love about what you did, is like, yeah, it crushed you. You got to this place where you said, like, all my creative energy is gone, everything just shut off. But you didn't stay there. You took steps from there to rediscover something. And then not only did you do that and you did healing work, but then you went back into the thing that you had just been harmed by. And so I would love to know, like, what was that piece? It happens, you kind of shut down, you shut off, you know, there's something not good going on in here. What was it that propelled you to move forward with kind of finding yourself and doing your healing work? And then do you even remember like what drew you back into this field after all of that? Like, how did you come back to really feeling empowered by it, rather than having it be this intimidating thing that it felt like at that moment?
Good question. Thank you. I know that when I was in it, I would wake up in the middle of the night in the fetal position. I would rock myself. I was in such an intense battle in my life, internally. It was hard for me to function. And you will get to the point, if you have not dealt with your trauma, if you have not dealt with your victimhood, you will get to a point where you can't keep on living the way that you're living. Because if you do, you emotionally are killing yourself. And I know that for myself, that was it. I had the imposter syndrome. I thought, gosh, what a phony. I'm giving relationship advice, and my relationship after the attempted sexual assault was falling apart. So why am I trying to give relationship advice to these, middle school and high school kids? I think that it was just an amazing journey for me of realizing that I wasn't perfect. I think that a lot of us, especially if you have survived something, you want to put your best foot forward. You want people to see you shining. You want people to see the success, the moments of, getting your diploma or getting degrees or getting accolades. You want people to see the title. At the time, I was running a nonprofit for education policy. I wanted people to see that. I did not want them to see me in the fetal position, rocking myself or waking up screaming or any of that. And I wanted those moments to end. And I realized the only way for me to do that was to be vulnerable. The only way for me to do that was to do my own work. I think a lot of people in my industry, they come into my industry because they want to save everyone. And there's a danger in that. There's the danger in that because if you haven't done your own work, what are you feeding them? What are the emotions? You might have all of the fundamental tools and you might share that with them. But if you haven't done your own work, then you're going to continue to feel like an imposter. You're going to continue to have this mindset where you think, this is the right way, but I didn't do it that way, when it happened to me. So I'm broken and there's something wrong with me. I realized that I think a turning point for me was this moment where I just thought I need to get over myself. I need to get over being perfect. I need to get over trying to do everything right. I need to get over the idea, when I used to share stories, I only shared success stories. I didn't want to share with my students that I had been assaulted or that something else had happened. I think that when we go through these moments in life, it is vitally important for us to be able to have take pause and really look inward and realize that you're still going to be all of those things and you'll be you. And it's okay to have these moments in your life where you weren't perfect or have these moments in your life where you weren't your best self, whether that's in public or in private. So just being willing to do that, I realized for myself that this is going to be a lifelong journey. It's not something where I'm doing this course for you, I put it out and I suddenly have arrived. And if I do feel that way, or when it happens that I do feel that way, something happens in my life personally or professionally, and I'm like, all right, and then we're back to learning again. So I think that I had to get over the fact that I wasn't perfect, I didn't know it all, and I could still teach people what knowledge I have, and that's okay. So that was the huge moment for me of realizing that it was okay to not be perfect. It was okay to get things wrong and still put this information out there.
Yeah. Well, I love that because I think that a lot of people in this field feel like an imposter, right? And they feel like if my life isn't perfect, then how can I be helping, or how can I be teaching this, or and I think it's important to recognize your life is never going to be perfect. So if you're waiting for that moment, that's never going to happen, right? And then also that one moment in your life doesn't have to define your future, which is what happened with you. You've had these moments, but you didn't let it define your future.
Yeah.
And I think that, what I'm curious about and really looking at it, because for example, for me, and when I've had challenges, especially like when my brother passed away, you ask, why me? You're like mad at spirit, God, you're mad at life. And you're like, why did I have to experience this? Why did this have to happen to me? But then it's like somebody had said something, why not you? And then it made me really think about that. And And not that I want the situation to have happened. If you can rewind it, you would, but it's happened. So what purpose can I find out of this now? What meaning, what growth experience? What can I do to help me in my healing process? And then in that healing process, find a better version of myself, right? So, and then when I look at your journey, one of the things that I have a question in, and this is kind of transitioning to everything that you've been through and now going into the business side of things, is what do you have about yourself? I look at you and you're one of those rare super growers, what I would say, right? Where, and what I mean with that is that you are willing to take an experience, or you're willing to look at a situation and say, how can I use this to contribute at a larger scale, right? So it's not just, okay, I learned this, it's great. How can I use this just to maybe work with one person, or even just working it with myself? But how can I use this to maybe implement into a school or develop a program for such things? You know, for a lot of people, they look at that and they're like, but who am I to do something like that? And, you know, that's where the imposter syndrome comes in, that doubt, that inner voice that kind of torments you at times. So what has helped you, one, shut that voice out, because we all have it, right? And then two, how did you get to that mindset that tells you, yes, you could do this, and I'm okay with failure if I mess up at it, but I'm still going to try to keep doing it until it actually happens?
Great questions. Yeah. So I started my current business in 2016, and I remember, thinking I really want to help people. And so how do you help people? Well, you gotta do these workshops, gotta do these trainings. And I would do these trainings and it would be like one or two people, and sometimes no one. And you just sit there and you think, okay, I have years of knowledge. All these people loved the work that I did in this other area. Why is this not working? What's wrong with me? And I kept on thinking, I kept on thinking small. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to help people. And when I went to school for my MBA in global business leadership, it was focused on system change. So how can you change systems on a global scale? And that was one of the first times that I started thinking, okay, how can I reach people globally? And when I did this training in 2019 with ESD Global, they were doing teacher of teacher training. So it was amazing. Brilliant work. And they were going around to all of these different countries and doing these trainings for people. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. They're so good at what they do. And then suddenly I thought, why can't I do something that reaches people globally? Just because they're doing this thing that's really amazing doesn't diminish or put down the work that I'm doing. How can I reach people on a broad scale? And that's when I started looking into meeting people like you. I know that in 2018, before I went to that training, I had a student come into my school. And it happened to be one of those days when I had thought nobody was going to show up to class. And it turned into a private session. But I remember before that session, I said, you know what, universe, if I'm supposed to be doing this work, you better give me a sign. I'm ready to quit. And isn't that the journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
I love being an entrepreneur. This is amazing. This is great. This sucks. I want to kick you, entrepreneur, out the door. And so I had this woman come into my session, and it turned into a private session. And I was so embarrassed that there was nobody else. And she looked at me and she was like, I am so excited right now. I get a private session with you. And I was just like, wow, that's turns my head around, turns my thought process around. This is good. And she said, look, I've been needing to go through one of these sessions for a long time, but I've been so resistant to change and actually facing this. 20 years ago, I was sexually assaulted at knife point in my dorm room, and I've never gotten over it. I'm a successful business owner. I do stuff in a very broad scale with the work that I do. I can't seem to get over this. And so I spent my time with her. We went over all of the different things that she could do in those situations. It wasn't like you should have done this, because there's just this automatic thought of like, oh my God. It was very much like, these are some options. These are some choices of things that you can do to support yourself. Should something like that happen again. And she just looked at me and she goes, everyone needs to know this. Everyone. And she said, I'm going to tell you something that I don't normally tell people. I'm an influencer who does online courses. And I was like, really? And she said, I focus on women's health. I'd love to, take you through a methodology that worked for me for online courses. And I was like, okay.
Tell me more.
Tell me more. And so I ended up doing my first online course, and I put it out there, and it not a lot of people bought it. But I realized that I could be reaching so many people. I had put it on Udemy. And I realized I could be reaching so many people. And so I ended up trying to think, okay, how can I make this even bigger? And then when the pandemic hit, I realized there was such a need. Domestic violence had risen throughout the United States. On average, it was 30%. In Hawaii, it had gone up to 46%. In our call centers, we were getting more than 46% increase for domestic violence calls. And suddenly that gave me agency, gave me incentive. I need to move faster. I need to do something more. How can I reach more people? And also, how can I reach more people and update my online course that, was there in 2018. And so I just put it out there as this thought. And when you have a thought or intention that you want to manifest, you put it out there, you stay focused, you see what happens. So I was out at this place called 13 Crossings that has these beautiful waterfalls. And I was hiking with my boyfriend and a friend, and my fanny pack was open and my phone fell out of the fanny pack, landed on my foot, and slid into the natural pools there. I looked down and I thought my life was over because everything's on my phone. I looked at my boyfriend and I was like, get it. And then he's diving and he's not having any luck. God bless him for doing it. And my friend looks over at this big herky guy and says, God, it would be nice if somebody else could help us. It was like this hero moment for this guy. He stands up. Oh man, where was your phone? Last scene, it was like right there. And so he dives down, comes up with the phone, acting like he's talking and having conversation on it. And I'm like, oh my God. And I think, wow, you are the perfect guy to beat up in my classes. And so I asked if I could contact him, and he shared with me some stuff that had gone on in his family that he would like me to help them with. And so it was this nice exchange of supporting one another with our dreams. And so I ended up going in and into making these online courses with him, just making the videos. And then it was about distributing. It was like, okay, how do I reach the world? And I had seen all of these things. It was so funny because when even before the pandemic started, I was really into holistic learning and everything. And I saw the Transformation Academy life coaching certification. I was like, I want one of those. I want one of those. I think that would be good. And I was talking to my dad, and my dad has been just my champion when it comes to education. He wants to invest. He's like, you see an online course that you want, let me know, I'll get it for you. So he ends up getting me this online course from the Transformation Academy, and that had sat there for a year. I'm sure that there's so many people out there who do this. I highly recommend you go through the course when you get it. But I was going through and thinking, how do I reach people? How do I reach people? And then I thought, oh my God, Transformation Academy. I need to contact them. They need to know about what I'm doing. So then we can change the world. And I think that you can do this. You can think big, you can dream big. And when you put it out there into the ether, it's going to come to you just naturally if you give it a chance and you are willing to open yourself up to faith.
Definitely agree. Thank you, Dad, first of all. So
yeah, thank you, Dad. Because this wouldn't be happening
if it wasn't for you. So
yeah, for sure. So actually, first of all, I love the story about the phone and how you met your co-instructor counterpart that you beat up during your videos in the empowerment self-defense course, because he's so adorable. He's this giant guy, but you can tell he's just like this teddy bear.
He's a teddy bear. Yes, even in the interview, he was like, I felt very uncomfortable doing these roles, but I felt like it was very important for me to do them, and I was just so grateful to him because that is not his style. He, yes, he is 6'4" and like 250, but and just a rock, but he is a rock who is a teddy bear.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that story, how that came to be. And I love the story of how this came to be. And when you reached out, it was like when I first received your information, when our team sent it to me, I was like, well, this is a really unique topic. And, at first we kind of hedged a little bit because it's very, very niche, right? Like I get it like you do, where it's like that woman that you had that experience with, where she said, everyone needs to know that. Like, I agree. And that when we talked about it, I was like, well, that's why we're doing this, is that people need to hear it, regardless of how many people need it. It's going to get out there. So it was like an immediate interest in the topic. And then when we met, like Joeel said, when we first started talking today, it was like instantaneous. It was like, she's definitely our people. She's authentic. She it makes the content that much better because it's coming from someone that really truly believes in and understands and knows and has lived what they're teaching. So that's awesome. But I wanted to point out a few things that stood out to me from what you were saying, because I think they're important, like little clues along the way for someone else who's going through their own journey of trying to develop a business based on what they're passionate about. And the first one was when you mentioned when you first started doing your workshops and like one or two people would come or nobody would come. And we had exactly the same situation. Like we started the same way at multiple times in our lives, because we both did some stuff in that realm before we even met. But then even once we met and we started holding events, there were times that we went to something and no one came. And there were times where it's just a couple people. And it was like, well, we just have to keep going. But we had those same moments, like you're saying, I love the idea of being an entrepreneur, but man, sometimes actually having to do it sucks pretty bad. But we kept doing it. And then I think I think you said another thing right after that. That's the exact answer to this, right? And it has to do with the thinking bigger. And that's that you went to that event and you saw, oh, look at what they're doing. And they're doing it in these other countries and they're doing it at a global scale. And it kind of plants the seed in your mind, like something else, something bigger, something broader is possible for me, right? And that's exactly what we did, where we started to attend different events. We'd go to entrepreneurship events and we would observe what they're doing, and then we would see how they're reaching people. And it's like, one of the things that we teach a lot is that you have to give yourself a diversity of experiences and different people and different places, and to learn what's possible, because our own little minds, based on our own experience, can only come up with what we've ever seen. And so you hadn't really been able to see it was possible. So being connected to this organization and seeing what they're doing was like, oh, okay, then it broadened your horizon. I think that that's important, that the possibilities are only there if you like we always say, your creativity is based on inputs.
Mm-hmm.
You can't create outputs if there's no inputs. So the inputs are the experiences, the people, the places that then you internalize. And then when you're trying to be creative, what to do, you have all that to pull from. So if you have no exposure to anything, there's nothing to be creative with. So that's like such the perfect example. And then the story about the lady where you had just one person show up, and the mindset of like, you're going, oh my God, this is humiliating. And she's like, oh my God, this is awesome. That part in and of itself is powerful, right? But another thing that I think people need to hear is that we have these people, we call them earth angels, where someone presents themselves in your life to give you a message. And that's what this person was for you, that she came that day for her own reasons, not realizing she was there to give you that message, but she needed to look you in the face and say, everyone needs to learn this, like, because you heard it in that moment, and that's something that propelled you. So it's like keeping your eye out for these types of things, where it's like, don't give up just because it's not working. If it's not working, expand your mind, find what other people are doing, which is what you did, and then be open to miracles, be open to earth angels. Keep your mind open to these ideas when they come, because that's exactly what you did. And it's so wild, because like, it's our story too. Yeah. And it's also exactly what we teach. So it's like, oh my gosh, you did exactly what we teach people to do. It's kind of wild.
Well, it's just the fact that you were open to it.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes the biggest difference. Because I've had, I remember, even before we met, I was doing a lot of workshops, and sometimes, I would show up and they'd be one person. But to me, it was like, well, this is one person I'm going to try to change their life. Right. But I had some really good insights about myself, about them. It was just an amazing experience. I remember one time I was in a Nurturing Fathers program, and I got to really connect with his father, and he was telling me, how much it impacted his life. But then he said, I know that you do a lot of work in the community because I see your name a lot, but I think that you need to work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
And this is a person that just got out of jail, and then for some people, they would judge that situation. And I think some people in the field says, well, I'm the teacher here. And what people don't recognize is that every time I give a workshop, and when I used to teach psychology at the college, I used to tell my first class, I'm the teacher, but I'm the learner. You're the teacher too. Yes. And what we miss is that, out of all those experiences, like, she gave you life transformation. It only takes like one idea and what seed. And I always tell people too, write things down because you'll forget about them, right? So it's like, just carry a notebook with you or on your phone or whatever it is, because you don't know when that inspiration is going to come. And I think one thing that's so inspiring about you is that you're willing to take inspired action. So you're not willing just to listen to the information. It's almost like the universe, God, or whatever you want to call it, is constantly like knocking at your door. And for a lot of people, they're like, I wish this opportunity would come to me. I wish this idea comes to me. And it's coming to you all the time, but you're not listening.
Yes.
So, and for you, you were open to listening and saying, okay, I don't know about that, but tell me more. I'm open to the idea, and I'm open to actually doing it, even if I fail at it, So, and I think that's such a valuable lesson for anyone to learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's so interesting as you're talking. I recently got accepted into this fellowship called Pre-X. It's through Accelerate Hawaii. And it's been mentioned in Forbes magazine and all this other stuff. So I was like, oh, fancy me. I get accepted into this fellowship. And then I found out it was a month-long fellowship. And it was like right as we were launching the last course. And I thought, how the heck am I going to be able to do this? They want me for 2 hours, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They want me to do all this work. I'm going to freaking out. And I was like, something, I got accepted. There's a reason why I'm here. And when I took their training, oh my gosh, they blew my mind. This was bigger than my MBA program. They have investors who run the trainings. And so you have these people in front of you who are multimillionaires willing to give you knowledge. And suddenly I'm thinking, wow, I never did think about being a multimillionaire. How do you do that?
Exactly.
It is. It's just this one idea that will come to you in your life, and it'll stick with you and sort of mingle and have to marinate for a little bit, like the life coaching course.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's really important for people to put that out there and not be afraid of what comes up. And if you are afraid of what comes up, still do it. I remember going to this waterfall and my boyfriend, he was like, I'm going to jump. And I was like, okay, you jump, I'm going to go climb down the side. and then he was like, well, why don't you jump? And I was like, I can't do that. And then I thought about it and I was like, well, if he can do that, I could do that. And I was like, now I can't walk down there because if I walk down, I can't do it. I have to jump off this waterfall into this giant pool of water. And I was freaking out. My heart was beating out of my chest. And I thought I was going to explode. And I ended up jumping and it was amazing. And so in life, we have these moments that are absolutely terrifying. Putting myself out there to reach out to both of you, I was absolutely terrified. I'm like, what if they say no? And I was like, do it anyway. So, I was so excited. And I think that that's part of the journey. You take risks. You do everything that you can to make your dreams possible, because at the end of the day, if you've done that and you fail, then you've done everything and you can be solid and okay with that. The last thing that you want is to say, yeah, I had this dream, but I didn't think I could do it. So I didn't try. Because you will be so, just look at what you've built with the Transformation Academy. It's huge. So I really, I want people to be able to know that their dreams are possible regardless of their circumstance, regardless of what has happened to them. I want them to be able to think, I am possible.
I love that. And my hairs are standing because the reality is that we are kindred spirits.
Indeed.
I think that we're all in alignment of our vision of life, the way that we want to contribute, because really our calling is to show people that their dreams are possible and be able to and open to the possibilities of life. So that's why we're so honored to have you with us, to share our journey with you, and you share your journey with us. And with that said, I think this is a good closing point right now, because it doesn't get better than that, right?
Yeah, that was like the perfect ending.
So if people want to reach you or they want to get to know more about you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. Yes. So Ellie Live Action, ELLE LIVE ACTION. I am on every social media platform. My main love is Instagram, but I also have my website and I do private coaching. I do online courses. I do workshops and trainings, and I now do retreats.
Yes, actually. So I'm just going to plug it here. She's doing her first official retreat this upcoming month. So lots of things to be celebrating this time. And also, we've collaborated on a couple courses. So you can also find her through transformationacademy.com as well. As you can tell, we adore her. We know that you will love her too. And everything that she says sounds just as authentic and real. And even when she teaches her courses, a lot of the videos are filmed in that amazing hammock. So she's just chillaxing and she's feeling good. It makes you feel good. So we hope if you've felt connected to her that you will continue to reach out and seek more of her beauty and wisdom, like we intend to do, to continue these dialogues going. And it's really been truly an amazing conversation. Not everybody can self-reflect and go so deep and share so authentically. So again, thank you for being you and being willing to do that with all of us.
Yes. Thank you for sharing your journey, and thank you for embracing you, and thank you for giving of yourself to this world to make it better. I think that you're one of those lights that can illuminate the world. And I think that you're also planting those seeds to really help other people in their journey be able to plant the seeds that they were meant to plant. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, you too. Mahalo.
Mahalo.